Welcome this evening to the August agenda meeting for the City Council. Please stand for the invocation. Pastor Howard Kaiser, Coal Mountain Baptist Church, give the invocation.
Strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. This council and this community will need a lot of prayers in the next few years, because unleashing principalities upon this place is a frightening thing. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, I just ask that this council, the mayor, and everyone who represents the city of Russellville will be protected, hedged around by your power. That you will give them wisdom and understanding in the decisions they've got to make. For they will be many. Some will not be pleasant, but help them to have the courage to stand for what is right, to do justice for the people of this city and this area. Bless them, lift them up, watch care over them. In Jesus' name do we pray. Amen.
Please turn to the flag for a pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Ms. Skelton, could you do a roll call for us this evening?
Ms. Caruth?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Tripp?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Here.
Mr. Harrell?
Here.
Mr. Westcott?
Here.
Mr. Brown? Justin?
Here.
Mr. Keller? Okay. Oh, Mr. Brown's not here. That's, sorry. That was not good.
Mr. Keller said here.
I know. Got it. Okay, you're here, Mr. Tripp. Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you. Council, you have before you the minutes from the last meeting. Can I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Crew. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Financial report, Ms. Duncan.
General fund revenues for July were $1,485,857, which was 2.9% above year-to-date projections. There were tax receipts of $843,277 and franchise fees and permits of $463,984. When you look at tax revenue in comparison to prior years, in 2019, the city year-to-date had received $2,549,152 compared to 2018 year-to-date, $2,507,739. At the county level, year-to-date for 2019, $2,820,507 was received compared to the same time period in 2018 of $2,878,825. There's a decrease from last year of $16,855, which is 0.32%. In comparison to budget, the actual year-to-date for the city is $2,549,152, which is ahead of budget of $2,496,667. At the county level, the actual is of $2,820,507, is ahead of the budget of $2.8 million. The general fund July expenditures were $1,035,908, which is 1.07 above year-to-date projections. $386,736 year-to-date is more received than expended. The street fund revenues for July operations was $150,419, which is 5.16 below year-to-date projections. Sales tax receipts were $569,250. The half-cent road sales tax was $56,736. The current balance as of 7/31 of the street fund is $1,099,670. The July operation expenditures for the street funds were $171,400. We just did that, didn't we? No, okay, $470, which is 9.6% above year-to-date projections. Sales tax improvement expenditures were $344,678 for Inglewood, overlay, and drainage. July revenues from the Economic Development Plan were $47,681, which is comprised of new sales tax of $44,981 and interest of $2,701. July expenditures was to Arkansas Valley Alliance for $7,320. The balances of the various economic development plans as of July 31st were: the 2003 fund had $1,482,689.74. The 2007 fund had $1,213,482.74. The 2014 fund had $700,080.57. July revenues for capital assets was $106,343, which is made up of new sales tax received of $89,960, parks received of $15,487, and interest of $897. July expenditures were $375,884. The fire department made the final payment of $280,000 on the pumper trucks. City Corp was $89,960, and administration was $5,925. Any questions? Good.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Turning to the mayor's report, item number 1 is approval of appointment of Larry Smith to serve as the planning commissioner to fill the vacancy left by Frank Russenberger, and Mr. Smith is here tonight. Here. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2 is approval of submission of candidate Betsy McGuire to serve on the Russellville Historic Commission.
So moved.
Got a motion by
Second.
Ms. Crew,
Second.
second by Mr. Tripp. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Department reports, Ms. Jackmore.
Good evening, council, mayor. This year, we rolled out 14 new computers. We replaced all 37 of the city's iPads, and we completed a comprehensive review of, with Pup County 911 of the CAD records management system. We looked at 4 different vendors and decided actually the current vendor gave us a deal we couldn't refuse, or free. And so we took them up on that. We also worked with partnering with the county for a failback strategy for our infrastructure upgrade. both the county judge and the mayor have requested that we move that to next year, so we'll be talking more about that and getting more details on that as we move forward. Excuse me. In reaching our community, the City of Russellville's website has grown every year. We're tracing since 2014, but we had 148,312 visits the current year from August 1st, 2018 to August 1st, 2019. We had 10,000 searches. The top pages visited were the Aquatic Center with 13,000, Animal Adoption and Animal Control. They typically rank pretty high in what's visited every year. District Court visitors, and the fee schedule. The fee schedule was for the Aquatic Center when we posted that, and we had a lot of hits for that information. Jobs, fireworks, bids, dogs, solid waste, and animal adoption were the top searches for the city. Of the traffic that comes to the city's website, 50% of that traffic comes from a mobile phone, 7% from a tablet. So there's been some talk of a website design, redesign actually, and we're working on that, kind of hit and missing around ideas, and we'll be probably focusing more on that next year. Mr. Olson, is that?
That's a correct statement.
Okay. But part of that is being ADA compliant, and of course we want to be able to access this information from our phones because that's how most of us do business. So we'll be looking to do that more. On social media for Facebook, the city has 8 total Facebook pages. The police department ranks the highest for the number of followers. They have over 14,000. Next would be Animal Control with 5,800, and third is the fire department with over 3,300. We have 3 Twitter accounts. City Hall, Julie has worked a lot with that over the last year, or you've been working on that. With 502 followers, the police department has 963, and the fire department has 98 followers. And with Instagram, the City Hall, we have 3 accounts. City Hall has 965 followers, fire department has 427, and the Aquatic Center has 251. The Aquatic Center's just been doing this for a year, so their following has come up significantly. So we're trying to be out there for the community, be available in ways that they want to reach us via the website, via social media platforms, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of getting the ball rolling in that area. And that concludes my report tonight. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Jackmore? Thank you, Dan.
Yes, we're going to work on that website, and hopefully this year, but it's probably going to be next year's budget.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it. Doing a great job.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on in the agenda to the committee reports. Finance Committee, and I will turn the floor over to the chairman, Mr. Westcott.
Thank you, Mayor. At 5:30 this evening, the Finance Committee met, discussed, and recommends to the council the following items. I'm going to skip 1 and 1A for right now and begin with item number 2 on the agenda from 5:30 was an appropriation from the Economic Development Fund for the final invoices to date for the comprehensive plan in the amount of $6,363.49, and we present that in the form of a motion.
I understand I have an economic development fund of expenditure of $6,363.49 been submitted in the form of a motion. Any discussion?
Do I have that report here, or just from the 5:30
This
meeting?
is from the 5:30. You should have it in your packet.
I sent it to you.
Okay, you may not have it there in front of you, Mr. Harold.
I don't have one.
Are you good, Mr. Harold? Proceed.
No, I'd like to see.
You'd like to see it?
Okay, yeah, I've reviewed that. I'm good. Did you want this one? Nope. I have reviewed that one prior to this meeting. I just hadn't seen it here, so,
Understand.
yes.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Items number 3 and 3A, discussion and consideration of a possible resolution authorizing the purchase of Hangar 11E with funds from Economic Development Funds Number 2, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk treasurer to sign a lease with Ingold Aviation Services for that hangar. Number 3A is the appropriation for that, and this is presented in the form of a motion contingent upon the signage of the lease, and we present that in the form of a motion.
Have a motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 4 is a discussion and possible resolution for the solid waste package bids, and we present that in the form of a motion.
I have a motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 5 is a discussion and consideration of a possible resolution regarding the lease agreement with Junior Auxiliary for the property located at 304 South Boulder Avenue, and we present that in the form of a motion.
I have a motion on the lease agreement with the Junior Auxiliary. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Items number 6, 7, and 8 were tabled. Item number 9 is an appropriation pass-through for the fire department in the amount of $1,376.02, and we present that in the form of a motion.
I have a motion for appropriation for fire department, which is a pass-through of $1,376.02. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Items number 10 and 11 together, both of these are consistent with the city's contracts with these groups. Number 10 is a consideration for the approval of the July invoices from Arkansas Valley Alliance for Economic Development in the amount of $7,464.14. Item 11 is a consideration for the approval of the second quarter reimbursement invoices for Main Street Russellville in the amount of $15,000, and we present those in the form of a motion.
I have a motion for items 10 and 11. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Again, holding off on items number 1 and 1A for the time being. Going to the finance agenda for this evening. Item number 1 is an appropriation. It's an insurance pass-through for the street department for some replacement street lighting in the amount of $12,371.50, and we present that in the form of a motion.
I have a motion on item 1 from the previous agenda item of street lighting. Any discussion?
Mayor, just for clarification, this is a replacement of some accident lights or something that had happened, and this is it's not adding new lights, it's replacing.
That is correct.
Okay.
Correct.
These are the ones on Phoenix.
There's on Phoenix, and there's one at the roundabout on Detroit, and where the previous roundabout was called, I believe it was Greenwich. There was a pole that was knocked down, we're replacing that one as well.
North Phoenix, 8th Street, and North El Paso. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 2 is an appropriation from the Parks Department, their 1 cent park sales tax in the amount of $30,834.87 for a portion of the cost of the Russellville Dog Park, and we present that in the form of a motion.
Have a motion for funding the dog park out of the 1 cent sales tax. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, Mayor, going back to items number 1 and 1A from this evening's agenda, the Finance Committee made no recommendation one way or the other, but simply voted to forward this to the full council for your consideration this evening. And so we do not in fact, we do not present this in the form of a motion. We're just forwarding this on to this council this evening for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there, present this to the council, is there a motion the council would like to entertain on this item? Item 1 or 1A?
Motion to discuss?
I got a motion to discuss by Mr. Tripp. Is there a second?
Second.
Multiple seconds. Mr. Keller, second. Okay, floor is open for discussion.
Well, the Finance Committee, just to kind of open the discussion, discussed, and to let everybody know, the sheet you have in front of you, the green city obligation, that's the price difference as proposed between the two. So there's approximately cost to the city $441,000 difference.
Does everyone on the council have the sheet that Mr. Tripp is referring to? Okay.
The standard traditional entrance being the $441,000 more expense than the proposed roundabout. And these are just, from Mr. Newman, the city engineer, the statement of probable cost.
So Mr. Tripp's presented that there is an additional cost with going to the standard entrance versus the roundabout.
I would like to just say that I don't have anything against roundabouts. I think there's a time and there's a place for them. But we're talking about placing this in one of the most busiest highways in Polk County, in between two traffic lights. Now, I understand roundabouts work, it's followed by other roundabouts, but, you know, and stationed right by, or a fire station stationed right next to it, you know, I have concerns of traffic congestion, the venues that Tech is gonna have, the traffic coming out of Tech, and with the traffic lights, to place them in between the traffic lights. And I'd just like to go on record and say that I think it's a bad idea. The city has already seen some of the roundabouts in some of the areas that they placed them in, and you know the last one we jackhammered up. So I think it's like I said, I think that there's a time and a place for them, but we're talking about a main highway here that has the potential. It's, you know, traffic's already bad on it, and just placing it in that position again between two traffic lights with all the venues and all that, I think it's just going to make traffic a whole lot worse than it already is. But I'd just like to go on record saying that.
Any additional discussion?
Yes. Mayor, at the finance meeting earlier, we briefly discussed this. At the inception of this project, it was estimated by, I believe, the Highway Department that the city's responsibility, and it's always been our plan from the very beginning, that the city's responsibility regarding this project would be for the cost of design of the drainage issue and the cost of moving the utilities. It was estimated by the Highway Department at that time to be around $700,000. We received less than a month ago a cost comparison from Craft and Toll, with entirely different set of numbers than what was presented to us as we walked in this evening. It's now before us. Mr. Tripp, if you would, what was that figure that you told us of what it would cost the city?
Before us, presented from the Public Works Department for a roundabout, the city obligation, which was the agreement with the Highway 326 swap, is $558,780 for the roundabout, and the standard lighted entrance, $1,400,000. A difference of approximately $441,000, being the lighted entrance more expensive.
Okay, again, as was discussed a little bit earlier, what we see broke down here in street lighting, $40,000 for the roundabout versus $75,000 for the standard entrance. That's not part of the original agreement of the city being responsible for the relocation of utilities and the design of the drainage portion of this project. So if you just add the utility relocation and the design fees, that equals the city being responsible for $975,000. My question is, how much of the cost of the design is related to the new entrance versus the drainage, which is our primary concern, is the drainage. That's the whole reason why we're having this discussion, or even began this discussion, was to alleviate the drainage problem at that particular intersection. So if you look at this cost comparison estimate from Craft and Toll dated 7/19, the cost of design for a standard intersection was $237,500. It's now estimated on this sheet that we received tonight to be $500,400. Why there's such a discrepancy, I don't know, but I'm still curious how much of these design fees are for the entrance and how much of that is for the drainage. I just want it to be very, very clear before we leave tonight, what is the financial responsibility for the city of Russellville?
I see Mr. Newman approach the podium. Mr. Newman, can you address some of the concerns that Mr. Westcott expressed in relation to the deltas between Craft and Toll estimate at that time and the estimate that you provided tonight?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can do my best. It's my understanding that the agreement for the improvements for the drainage at O Street intersection and such originally included from the Highway Department estimate a widening of the Arkansas 7 as part of the original cost. And as part of that entire fee included the design for all of that work together, not just the drainage culvert. That's my understanding. That, so to clarify that for the council. But the discrepancy between the preliminary costs received from Craft and Toll does not include the drainage. That was comparing the roundabout construction cost and only the intersection improvements for the widening of the roadway, which ultimately would include potentially the new entrance location for Arkansas Tech University. And at that, yes, sir.
Going back to the sheet that was presented to us this evening.
Yes, sir.
Up there at the top, under the box culvert drainage, $1.2 million. That's the same on either style of entrance. The O Street intersection improvements, turn lane and drainage, $75,000. That's the same, both options. The O Street signalization modifications, $150,000. That's the same on each one. The main difference is a signal at the Tech entrance and the higher amount of the contingency fund, but the bulk of this project being the drainage, at least from the appearance of this right here, is the same, regardless of which entrance is chosen by whomever makes that decision. Is that correct?
The drainage has zero to do with the widening of the road or the roundabout. It's a separate box culvert from O Street to the north, so it's an independent item. That's why at the previous Finance Committee, it was not included in the comparison between the two. So the $1.2 million shown here that I've estimated, and is actually more than the state estimated for that same linear footage. I was looking at more updated data. They had $1 million for that single number in their process. And so what I did to compare it to what Craft and Toll had previously presented to council as an attachment for the Finance Committee, I took their numbers, and there was a discrepancy and I talked to Mr. Long during the process of trying to identify what the differences were. And I say discrepancy, he had taken out drainage, all drainage from the project in those initial comparisons. The state had estimated the construction cost that I was aware of, that I had opportunity to get a copy of, was $3,025 is what I saw from them as hard cost on the estimated number. And when we took away the $150,000 signalization, $1 million what the state estimated for the drainage, and a $50,000 box culvert extension, which was associated with the drainage. And what I did differently than Mr. Long did on the differential, it was the $75,000. I believe he took $75,000 out, I took $50,000. So there's a little bit, $25,000 difference in how those numbers were derived. So what I did on this comparison that I put in front of you, I tried to compare the first line item, entrance requirements, showing basically the $990,000 for a roundabout would be the asphalt construction cost and everything associated with that in that particular area. The 1.8 million would be what it would take to do the widening for that location, according to what the state's original estimate for the widening of that roadway would be. Then from their estimate, I pulled out the intersection improvements at O Street, which was $75,000, $150,000 for modification at O Street, and then the state originally had $1 million, and I felt that was low, and $200,000 I deemed was enough difference to show an increase on the estimated cost. And then I do have an item in there identifying there would be a signal requirement at the new entrance at some point, approximately $250,000. And the contingency of 10% of those construction costs is how I arrived at the estimated construction costs from the Highway Department. And just to add a little clarification about the lighting, I know that's been a point of discussion. During one of the meetings with the Highway Department, their construction cost estimate that they provided, I mentioned, was about $3 million. They specifically stated lighting, street lighting that was existing was not part of their construction costs and would have to be added or put back in. And so I put those back in. We'd be removing approximately 11 lights during the widening of the roadway if we chose that option. So on that one side of the road that would be widened, if they weren't replaced, we wouldn't have lights. And then a roundabout by design requirements requires them to be lit regardless if there was lighting in that location or not. And so there would be approximately, I think I figured 5 or 6 to be put in there. So that's where those street light estimates came from that I put in there. And design fees, I followed suit. Crafton Toll had 12%. I took straight 12%, just tried to get apples to apples. And this is a design traffic study. When I was employed with the Highway Department in Louisiana, the traffic study depends on the complexity of what the Highway Department required. Could be challenging or not. So I put 25,000. Sometimes they require modeling, not just the intersection, but the adjacent signalization to get a corridor. So depending on what Little Rock was going to ask at the time, I was unclear on that. So these are the totals that came as an estimate. There's no drawings. These are conceptual, say sketches, I think. So with that information, this is what we're presenting for comparative purposes, and be happy to answer any more questions.
Any more questions, Mr. Newman?
You said that when in a previous discussion that you thought that the Highway Department, for safety reasons, preferred the roundabout.
That is my experience when I was employed with the Louisiana Department of Transportation. Nearly every opportunity that the state had, we were replacing signalized intersections with roundabouts due to a reduction in severe crashes. Historical data from the Federal Highway, there's numerous documentations out there that show that's the average. It's a good reduction from the T-bone intersections. You may have, for a short time, people learning roundabouts, some rear end side swipes, while people are learning, paying attention to signing, yielding, and figuring out how to drive through these. But that is how they project it. And for particular, it's a matrix. If you go to Federal Highway Administration, how to improve safety, a roundabout is one of the tools that they utilize. So yes, sir.
Glenn, can you tell me the distance that Mr. Harris was talking about being so close to the fire station and the light that's there, and the one at Whataburger? Is that a complication with locating a roundabout in that proximity to them for traffic flow on a highway this busy?
To be honest, the traffic study has not been performed. The proximity of them, it's going to be slugs of traffic per se coming through there. I cannot answer how much of an impact that would be. The closer they are, the less productive a roundabout is because it works from the influence of light. I believe they're closer. It's over a quarter-mile separation each one of those. I think there's approximately 3,300 feet, three-quarters of a mile between the two lights. So we're roughly, I think, halfway between there. So there should be gaps, but if that's something that, the council deems appropriate, then maybe a traffic study would need to be performed earlier in the process, looking at the corridor, if that's a concern.
Thank you.
Mayor, where does this money come from?
This money would come from the 1 cent sales tax. Capital improvements.
Mayor, I have had phone calls, text messages, people in my district and out of my district, and I haven't had one that was in favor of this, not one.
Well, I would like to contend again and state the facts as I know them, and feel free to correct me on any of them.
Okay.
The highway department prefers it because it's safer. It slows people down. It is not a four-way stop, it's a three-way, and most of the time it's really a two, just a pass-through. Number two, Tech prefers it. Their board has come out and said that that's what they would rather have. Three, we don't have to take out all the trees around the curve, which I think we could all sit here and say that that's one of the biggest, sites of Tech. I mean, that you have arrived, like the arrival factor that they speak of. You always have to go down to the money, though, and that's what it always boils down to, is the money. And it is half the price to the taxpayer, half the price. So the facts are that it's safer, the entities prefer it, we do less damage, less work, and it costs half the money. I think it would be fiscally irresponsible to go the other route with it, and that's my opinion.
I understand on the money part, but you're also paying for, I don't think that we should just say, hey, this is cheaper, and then, if you think, me personally, as far as I would rather pay more than not be stuck in, sitting in traffic, than to be able to, for the flow of traffic to go. I mean, I understand it is cheaper, but I believe it's going to be more of an inconvenience for people who's coming through Russellville. The folks, I mean, we're talking about a main road here, and like I said, if there was a roundabout at the fire station, if there was one by New China, if there was one by Lakefront, all those that kept traffic flowing, but you're going to turn right out of Tech, and you're going to hit a traffic light on both sides. And, like I said, when Tech has their venues, or maybe is Tech going to be out there directing traffic? Because that's the way it's going to go. I mean, and you're going to be directing it on a main highway. So every ball game, every graduation, every event you guys have out there, and like Miss Cruz said, I got out and stormed around Russellville today. I talked to a lot of folks, and quite frankly, they thought I was joking. I mean, really. I mean, they actually thought I was joking when I told them this. So,
Well, with all due respect to you, Mr. Harris, the highway department, I feel like it's that's what they do for a living, their expertise. And if they're sitting there telling us that that's the way to go,
Well, they also said that we wouldn't have a flood problem there at Old Street after they got done too, but we got it.
But we got it.
I
That's right.
wasn't privy to that conversation.
We
I
did.
mean, you know,
I would,
it is, I mean, you know.
Mr. Keller has not had the floor. Let Mr. Keller speak, please.
Just to piggyback off of what Mr. Olson has said, I think when you look at the safety issue a little bit further, not only does the highway department say that it's safer, when you add to it the loss of lights, that we just, I don't know about other folks, but just myself, the loss of lights on there that we may or may not be putting back, and if we do, it's going to cost even more if we go through a standard intersection. Loss of light there is going to make that curve even less safe than it currently is, with or without a roundabout. It's safer for pedestrians. Roundabouts are just safer for pedestrians. And then beyond that, the big thing for me is, I think you're 100% right, Mr. Harris. This is a main thoroughfare coming through town. If we go the standard entrance way, then we're going to have an unspecified amount of time without any sort of signaling whatsoever there at that intersection. And I think that only makes everyone who travels on Arkansas around there more unsafe. I just, I think from a cost savings and from really from a safety standpoint to the citizens of Russellville, as much as it pains me to say, I feel like the roundabout's the way to go.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, you may.
you stated the capital improvement fund, that this will actually be funded out of the 1 cent streets and drainage tax, correct? Not the capital improvement.
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Newman, just for clarification, when you were talking about the highway department, the Arkansas Highway Department prefers the roundabout or the Louisiana Highway Department?
My experience, clarification, the Louisiana definitely prefers that roundabout. When we had discussion with the current district administrator, they would not commit to which one or the other that they wanted, as in they would want the city to decide what they wanted in that area. They would not give a commitment here.
Mayor, would it be prudent, I mean, I don't know if we're making headway or not, but would it be prudent, if not, to go to a special call meeting in a week or two to readdress this after some more thought, questions?
It's certainly up to the council to decide whether they want to make a motion to consider one of these alternatives tonight or to table this discussion for another meeting.
I would like to see this resolved soon, but as Mr. Westcott had said earlier, we just got these numbers, approximately an hour ago. And is there any way we could specifically request a recommendation from the highway department?
As Mr. Newman has stated, if this highway department is going to be somewhat neutral on this issue, they haven't given their tentative acceptance of a roundabout, if that's the way the city wants to go. But I do not believe in my correspondence with them, they're going to give us a preference. We do have a preference from Arkansas Tech on this issue, and that's up to the council to decide which approach is the best for the city.
Mr. Mayor, is it correct that the drainage issue is separate from this part? As far as the two projects, are they tied together?
As Mr. Newman indicated earlier, the numbers provided here include the drainage along with the roundabout and/or standard entrance for the street widening. So these numbers include both.
Because I thought that our whole purpose was to solve the drainage issue and not necessarily deal with the street and the signals and all, but to get the drainage solved. And I thought that was separate from what the street was going to be. Am I incorrect on that? Am I correct?
I will just give you my,
That's exactly
go ahead.
So if that is correct, then I'd like to see the drainage part move forward. And we won't talk about the entrances, that's another deal, but there've been years, everyone said they've been kicking the can down the road, and unless it has to go together, I understand, but if it doesn't, let's don't stop the drainage. Let's
Well, I'll
let
let
that
Mr.
project go.
Mayor,
I'll let
may-
Mr. Newman address that, but the drainage is affected by the decision that's made.
Mayor, may I say,
Yeah.
refer, Mr. Harrell, the original discussions, Tech was hesitant on the drainage portion, and it was a somewhat of a mutually agreed or, verbally agreed that they would allow, they would concede for the drainage project if they could get a new entrance in the park, as part of the package, because they have to give us the right-of-way for the drainage project. And at first, there was a concern, and then with the discussion of the additional entrance, part of the package, they then okayed the easement needed to address the main problem of how all this came about is the drainage. And so that's how we got from there to here.
Let me also state that depending on the option that's selected will depend upon where the drainage is actually installed. If you have to do the street widening, where this drainage is installed is going to be different than if you leave it as is and do a roundabout. So that decision has to be made as part of this drain. You can't just do the drainage without making a decision on this, what the street's going to look like. Dr. Bowen, did you have a comment you'd like to present to the council?
I was wondering if it would be possible for Mr. Long to make a few statements in regards to the safety information that he presented to us at Arkansas Tech.
Yes, Mr. Long, do you have some information that's pertinent to this discussion?
We just want to offer the fact that we've looked at this new entrance with Arkansas Tech officials, spent a lot of time talking to them about it, talking with Glenn, obviously, and the Highway Department. There are three things that are facts that you need to understand. First one is that roundabouts are more efficient. So the idea about there being two stoplights a quarter of a mile in each direction is really a moot point. Traffic will move through this much more efficiently than if we ultimately end up with a stoplight there. The second thing is they are safer. The data provided by the Federal Highway Administration prove that they are much safer alternative to a T-bone or a regular T intersection. The third thing is it is aesthetically much more pleasing to look at than a standard signalized intersection. Combined with the fact that if we go with a standard intersection, we'll have to widen a long section, half-a-mile section of Highway 7 and take out all those trees, compounds that. So I just wanted to offer those three things, observations about why we, Craft and Tull, are proponents of a roundabout. We do traffic engineering in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and that is the preferred method. We do much more intersections that are roundabouts now than we do standard lighted intersections. Northwest Arkansas, they're really catching on. The comment that Highway 7 is such a heavily used thoroughfare, because of the efficiency, that actually supports the use of a roundabout rather than a standard intersection. So I just wanted to offer those things from a design perspective from a company that's done several roundabout designs.
Mayor, I say we move on this. I say we owe it to the citizens over there to fix the drainage. I'm scared to even wait around. I mean, there may be something else that tacks on with this to fix the drainage. I mean, we've discussed the roadway out here, Marina Road, and we've got this tech entrance. I think that it's here before us. I think that we ought to move on it and get it done, whichever way it goes, to get the drainage fixed.
I appreciate your sentiment, Mr. Harrison. I think sometimes that we can get an analysis paralysis on some of these issues. So what's the will of the council?
Mayor, I make a motion to, for the approval of item number 1A, standard intersection.
I understand I have a motion for item 1A, which is the standard intersection. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go roll call. Roll call vote.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
No.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
No.
Mr. Harrell?
No.
So pass because we need 5 votes. Unless you want to. Motion needs 5 votes to pass. Current vote, 4 yeses and 3 noes. I will abstain at this time. I will not pass a vote, therefore motion fails. Any additional discussion on this item before we move on?
I'd like to make a motion to approve 1.
Have
Second.
a motion to approve item number 1. Have a second. Mr. Keller? Roll call, please.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Westcott?
No.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Ms. Carew?
No.
Mr. Harris?
No.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
We have a 4-3 in this case. Mayor will pass a yes vote. Motion passes.
Absolute absurdity.
It's amazing.
And Mayor, that's the last of the finance agenda.
Understand that is the last of the finance agenda. Moving back into the, moving forward into the council agenda. Personnel committee, Mr. Harrell, did you have a report on personnel committee?
No report.
No report. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is old business. Item number 1, public hearing and consideration of a possible ordinance to close part of South Independence Avenue right-of-way. This is the second of 3 readings. Do I have a motion?
Motion to dispense with the reading requirement, read by title only with a short explanation.
I have a motion to suspend rules, read by title only with a short explanation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Keller. Any discussion? Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance vacating and abandoning a part of South Independence Avenue to the city of Russellville, Polk County, Arkansas, and for other purposes. This ordinance, if passed, would vacate an alley that is on part of South Independence Avenue at the northeast corner of Lot 10, Block 20, A.E. Luker addition to the city of Russellville, Polk County, Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on to item number, so next month we'll have the 3rd reading on this particular ordinance. Moving on to item number 2, consideration of possible resolution for removal from storage old and outdated personnel files from past years to include 2013 and prior.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Have a motion to approve by Mr. Westcott, second by Ms. Carew. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business item number 1. Consideration of the Russellville Airport ordinance. This was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. What is the desire of the council on this item?
Motion to dispense with the reading requirement, read the first of 3 readings by title only with a short explanation.
I have a motion to suspend the rules. Read by title only with a short explanation for the first of 3 readings. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Keller. Any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
In order to modernize the current airport zoning to correlate with the changes to the Russell Municipal Airport since the original airport zoning in 1987, repealing ordinance numbers 1243, 1264, and 1272, and for other purposes. This ordinance, if passed, would modernize the airport zoning to reflect the current conditions at the Russell Municipal Airport. It would repeal the old ordinances where portions no longer are applicable because of FAA regulations or correcting correcting measurements or other factors that have changed over time at the Russell Municipal Airport to reflect the current conditions of the Russell Municipal Airport.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on to item number 2.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to dispense of the reading requirement, read one time only for passage tonight, please, with short explanation.
I understand we have a motion on item number 2, which is consideration of a resolution to set a public hearing to close portion of 60-foot right-of-way running east to west in Block 11, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a motion to suspend the rules, read one time only with passage tonight. No emergency clause at this time. Do I have a second?
Have you done the public hearing yet?
Second.
Have you done the public hearing yet?
No, because this is a new item.
Well, this is a resolution, too,
It's a resolution.
Oh,
to set
thank
the
you.
public hearing for sometime at the next regular meeting, unless
It's
we,
September.
right, unless you're going to have a special meeting.
Did we not discuss Tuesday having everything packaged at Tech's request to address it all potentially in one night? We all sat there at the agenda meeting and was pretty much in agreement that, hey, this is due that few exceptions when we need to suspend the rules and be able to do things quickly, because Tech has students come in that they need to find a place to teach.
We did have that discussion, Mr. Tripp. I don't have my notes from the agenda prep meeting, but I do recall us having that discussion.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Tripp that our intentions when we left there, that this would be in a form that we could vote and pass so that Tech could move forward.
Right, but there's also a requirement of setting a public hearing in which there was no setting by anybody there.
What I would suggest, gentlemen, is that we consider a motion for the resolution to set a public hearing. We have the public hearing next week, and we also have a special call meeting in which we can consider an ordinance for passage. But it is up to the will of council on how to address this.
Mayor, I'm okay with that, but last time we did that, there was
Let's
a little
do
bit of
that.
fallout or something overlooked or something. You know, the gentleman came back later, let's just make sure that all the Ts are crossed and Is are dotted, please.
Certainly. I will ask Ms. John Dahl to make sure that if we go forward with this resolution for a public hearing and ordinance, that we make sure that the ordinance is clean and cannot be challenged by a citizen in any other capacity.
Mayor, I make a motion to what you said a while ago.
So I have a motion.
Move this set a public hearing to next week and include the ordinance package and everything together.
Do you want to select a night in part of your motion, or would you rather?
Just whatever works the best for everybody. Just
So I have a-
one day next week.
Have a motion?
You're going to have a day, because that's what's in the resolution. That's what's in every resolution that we pass for a public hearing, to give the public notice.
Tuesday?
Okay, Tuesday, you've got Cemetery Commission that also meets here at 5:30, but we could meet here right after that, say 6
o'clock.
6 o'clock downstairs.
So I have a motion to pass the resolution, to accept the resolution for setting a public hearing for next Tuesday.
The 20th.
What date that is?
The 20th.
The 20th at 6 o'clock. At that time, we will have an ordinance prepared for reading by the county, and consideration by the council. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Westcott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, consideration of possible ordinance to establish small wireless facility deployment, submitted by Ms. John Dahl, city planner.
In April of this year, the state of Arkansas adopted regulations to establish the Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act, and jurisdictions are supposed to have that in effect by September 1st. Obviously, I wasn't on staff early enough to help get us there by September 1st, but we're doing the best we can to bring our community up to state requirements. As I said, this act goes into effect on September 1st, and it provides clear regulations for small wireless facilities to follow as they install these small cell initiatives. And so we're just trying to update our current regulations with this. The Planning Commission will be holding a public hearing on this at their next meeting on the 26th, I believe. So the General Assembly found that the deployment of small wireless facilities and other next generation wireless and broadband network facilities is a matter of federal and statewide concern and interest. Wireless and broadband products and services are a significant and continually growing part of our economy, and accordingly, we want to encourage the development of strong and robust wireless services throughout our community. By enacting this regulation, we are meeting the growing consumer demand for wireless data and increasing competitive options for communication services available to our residents and promoting the ability to effectively communicate with other citizens and their local officials as needed. These small cell facilities will potentially include 5G technology and help the community to allow the installation of devices to become a more smart city. Inclusion of this zoning code regulation will lay the foundation for Russellville to include some of the smart city infrastructure as we plan for future development and capital improvement projects. I would recommend to the Planning Commission that they approve this for your recommendation at our next Planning Commission meeting. This is the first look at this ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. John Dawes. Any questions?
Mayor, with that, is that required to go to the Planning Commission before it comes to us? And if that is required that it go to them before it goes to us, then we need to table this tonight?
That is correct.
Okay. Motion to table this item till our next meeting.
Is this,
Well, just, if you're going to do 3 readings, it's not going to hurt anything to read it first time for 3 readings. To tabling it will just, you're going to have 3 readings when it comes back to the Planning Commission, and I don't anticipate there's going to be many changes, if any.
Okay, let me ask you this. Knowing that come September, this state law becomes, law that this thing be approved.
Well,
Is it required that this item go back to the Planning Commission before it comes to us?
under our procedures, we could either have a change in the zoning code, either can originate from the Planning Commission, or by state law, the council can make the change absent any type of Planning Commission initiation.
Okay.
So that's why it's going to do both. I mean, the Planning Commission is going to review it. and
Sure.
If y'all stick to y'all's 3 readings, and the law's in effect, it's set out a deadline of September 1st for cities to comply with the small wireless. And
Okay.
of course, that's passed by the FCC mandating the states to go with this method.
Considering that it was required of us to have passed this before we would meet again, and considering that we do have the freedom here this evening to approve this without it going to the Planning Commission, I move to dispense with the reading requirement, read one time only with a short explanation.
One time for passage or
One time for
3?
passage.
One time for passage.
All right, I have a motion on the floor to read this ordinance by title only, suspend the rules, read one time only with a short explanation. Have a second. Ms. Krug, was that a second?
Yes.
Second, Ms. Krug. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance amending the zoning code for the city of Russell, Arkansas, which is ordinance number 1966, and for other purposes. This ordinance, if passed, would would make the proper changes in the zoning code by adding a new Section 25, which would implement the Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Within Cities Act that was passed by the state this year at this session. It is found codified at ACA Section 23-17-501, which is being compliant with the FCC's recent ruling for promoting small wireless facilities deployment within cities.
Motion to adopt?
Have a motion to adopt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second, Mr. Keller. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
No,
Yes.
Can we, Mr. Harris would like to reconsider something if that's possible
Yes, sir.
at this point.
Mayor, on the one,
The roundabout issue.
on the roundabout issue, the second vote that we voted on, it was yet a motion to reconsider.
Second.
Have a motion to
Just for the record, for the drainage, because, the whole, my vote should have been a yes, basically, on the second.
Okay, help me. How do we address that? Motion to reconsider.
He wants to go on record.
Well,
For the drain.
Yes.
The reconsider has to pull it back out, so there has to be a issue whether the council as a whole wants to reconsider the issue. And is there going to be a revote on it?
Yes.
Yes, he wants to change his no vote to yes.
Well, that's the only way to do it because the vote's
Okay,
taken,
have a
so.
motion to reconsider item 1 on the Finance Committee agenda, and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Let me find my notes here, because I lost my.
I make a motion to approve item 1.
I do have a motion to
Second.
approve item 1, and a second by Mr. Tripp. Any discussion?
And again, item 1 being a roundabout.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Westcott. So we have a motion to approve item number 1, which is the roundabout, and we have a second by Mr. Tripp. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Roll call.
Mr. Harris,
Yes. I'm sorry.
Mr. Tripp,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Harold,
Yes.
Mr. Westcott,
No.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Ms. Caruth.
No.
Okay. 2 noes.
We have 5 yes, motion carries.
I'm
Motion to
sorry for
adjourn.
the confusion, guys. Sorry.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Thank you for the use of the